Good evening, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, invited guests, thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight at the Business Research Project launch. Absolutely delighted to be here. My name is Paul Donovan. I'm acting head of the School of Business. And I know that the person I'm replacing, Professor Robert Galvin, I would absolutely love to be here this evening. He's actually enjoying himself on sabbatical at the moment, enjoying the fruits of his labour. But it's particularly delightful to be here to welcome you to the launch of the Business Research Project, which is a fundamental part of what we're trying to achieve here at the School of Business in Maynooth. If you know as well, you'll know that the Business Research Project is a plank in the middle of the 5 master's programs that we're currently running at the school. We began about 3 years ago with the Masters in Strategy and Innovation and the Masters in Business Management. But we've gradually extended out the portfolio of the programs, and it seems to have struck a chord with students, and the programs are growing and developing as we pass through the years. But even in recessionary times, it's great to see the numbers growing and the students responding quite well. I think fundamentally, when you start offering masters and undergraduate degrees out to the marketplace, we should ask ourselves what our degree is for, and that should teach us how to deliver them. If we know an awful lot about why a degree, why do we have a degree, then it should inform us as to how we actually deliver it to the students and to our stakeholders out there in business and in society. And the way I see it is, an undergraduate is general education, despite the fact that over the past years, undergraduates have become quite specialised. And really, they were designed in the past to become a very general education for the student, teach them how to think, really. And a master's was also designated, and I'll come back to this in a minute, has always been designated as a licence to practice. And doctorates, of course, a licence to teach. Now, we'll come back to the masters for a moment, which we deliver 5 here at Maynooth. It's always struck us quite strange that, especially at business, if we're actually licensing people to practice business, we should be teaching them from that stance. And it always struck me as strange when I was actually going through education that you could go to some universities, you could actually attend and be lectured by a lecturer who was supervised by a senior lecturer, who was chaired by a professor, and none of them would have ever worked in a business. And that struck me as quite strange if what the product is a license to practice. So that informed quite a lot of what we've been trying to do out here at Maynooth over the last 5 years in developing programs that help people to go out and to work when they leave us at senior levels of organisations and to work effectively and immediately. We're trying to do, I suppose, what you would expect if you were running a business, what you would expect students to have when they emerge from a postgraduate programme. We think that the student should be able to organise and formulate an appropriate research question and explore it, and pull material together in a coherent and systematic manner, and learn as they go along about demonstrating sound judgment, everything organisations are looking for in postgraduates. How do you gather and analyse data? And this is what you'll be doing in your business research project, and to draw appropriate conclusions. Data is data until an intelligent mind comes and makes something of it. And to use the analytical skills and critical thinking to pull together a coherent argument at the end of the day in the form of a thesis. The process for our students is pretty straightforward. We have an allocation of projects over the next 6 weeks, and we engage the students in business research training immediately after that. So once they've been allocated their project, they go through a process of business research training, and then over a period of 4 months, they are supervised by experienced experts who give direction and soundboards and mentoring to the students so that they can actually deliver an effective thesis at the end of the day. Every postgraduate conducts primary research in an organisation. This is quite valuable for organisations because they get brilliant minds supervised by other brilliant minds attacking really serious problems that the organisation is facing. And finally, the production of the business research project. Who are the supervisors? Well, the supervisors are key to this process. So following training in business research methods by Dr. Christina Donnelly at the school and Professor Ann Huff, the the students engage on their projects with experienced supervisors, both from Ireland and abroad, who have long experience in terms of managing these projects, and also have one foot in terms of academia and the other foot in terms of the actual world of work. Some of them are domestic, some of them are from other business schools, some of them are from our own school. Brian Donlan is the co-director of the Innovation Value Institute, a really important part of the School of Business at Maynooth. We'll gloss over this guy, obviously not worth much. Heidi Foster, who has been one of our key supervisors over the last few years, is the CEO of Exchange House and a Harvard graduate working in frontline services for the travelling community. John Quilliam was an extremely gifted scholar, but spent most of his working life in line management in ESB and in charge of the International MBA program in Trinity, and one of our key supervisors. We've also stolen from the UK Sean Rickard, who's a lecturer in business economics at Cranfield, and was chief economist with the National Farmers Union in the UK. Peter, one of our own staff here, was the global head of innovation excellence for GSK, and lectures in innovation at the school here. Sad to report, one of our supervisors, Tony, in the last few weeks passed away, and those of you who know Tony know him well, know him as a really courteous gentleman, and a fantastic supervisor and a fantastic lecturer at the School of Business here, and he will be sadly missed. And I know the first thing Tony would say if he was here would be, get on with the pub. He's that practical, but everyone who knew him found him to be one of these wonderful gentlemen, a giant among people, and replacing him will be impossible. The students work with an extreme great range of organisations, and one of the things Tony was very proud of at the School of Business was the range of organisations. So we work with household names from both here and globally. And when our students, of course, go and talk to future employers, they're able to say, look, I've been working with this organisation for the last 4 months on a particularly important issue for them. And that becomes the issue at the interview. So the project gets them in the door for the interview, but also it becomes a really important platform for them to be able to show that they have all those competencies that we talked about earlier. So it's not like other organisations, other big universities, where they're going in and saying, I was part of a team of 5, I was part of a team of 6. When I was interviewing those guys, I was always wondering, were you the lazy one? You know, I was always thinking, were you the guy who hung on to everybody else? Whereas with our project, you have to write the thing yourself. You have to demonstrate that you did the work, and there's no ways about it. Just a cameo story out of the 2 people who came through the business undergraduate program and who went into the master's program. Giedra Visaskaita was an immigrant from Lithuania about 14 years ago, living in Mullingar at the moment, in Finton Lauder. And both of them came through and worked on a project with Kirby Engineering, a 90 million turnover company selling electronic and transmission systems all across Europe. And they worked on a project about internationalising Kirby's business. And it was a really exciting project, and Finton went on to work for Job International, and Giedra was actually headhunted by the firm, by Kirby, and is working as strategic planning executive reporting to the chief executive. That story is littered right across the piece. They're the graduation year of 2011. We've tracked their progress. Every one of them is working in a job they want. And when people ask us what's the employment rate in terms of the 2011 class, we say it's 100%. People blink and say, what do you mean 100%? Every one of them. So the business research project is a critically important issue for students in terms of their employment. So you can see for what we're trying to do at the School of Business here. We've got 1 foot firmly planted in terms of the relevance issue in terms of business. We've got 1 foot firmly planted in terms of the rigour needed in terms of delivering academic results. So it's particularly exciting and interesting for us this evening to welcome our guest speaker to launch our business research project this evening. A household name, when you often say this person needs no introduction, I think that's the very time you should give them an introduction, because it's really, it really lets you down as a host if you don't introduce people really well. And I think our guest this evening has a combination of business excellence and acumen. but also has a humanitarian side, which is something that fits really well with us at Maynooth here, given the histories and tradition of this university. You'll know Bobby as an Irish entrepreneur and businessman. If you wake up on any time before 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning, I really urge you to tune into News Talk's Down to Business programme. It's a really positive business programme. Last week they were in Limerick and looking at a very, very positive story from that city. Bobby is a dragon on Ortiz Dragon's Den and the chairman of Insomnia Coffee. He's one of the owners of many different restaurant interests, and he's a variety of business interests in food and hospitality, technology, manufacturing and retail. He's a very popular public speaker and mentor, and as evidenced by he's here with us this evening. He lives in Sandy Cove, for you outside Dublin. That's just outside Dublin City, with his wife Mary and 4 daughters. And he's actively interested in raising money for a number of charities. These charities include Special Olympics, Fair Trade. He raises money for Blackrock Hospice and over 75,000 for the hospice in the last 3 years. He's a keen yachtsman over the last 25 years and races competitively into Limerick. And more recently, Bobby raised in excess of 40,000 working for Habitat for Humanity. And in April 2011, he led a team of 10 business people on a house building expedition in Zambia, alongside local builders. So please give a warm Maynooth welcome to Bobby Carter.
Thank you very much, Paul, and thank you for a lovely introduction. You're right, it is nice. Sometimes people say, oh, there's that guy from the telly and you've got to go up and do it yourself, so I really appreciate that. And it is lovely to be here. I haven't been in Maynooth, to my shame. I haven't been in this campus before, and I had a bit of a look around earlier on, and what a great place. Just really, really got a great vibe the minute I came in the door, and the architecture and the setting is just absolutely fantastic. Now, I'm going to start by telling you, I was at a debate, an inter-varsities debate up in UCD about 2 months ago, and they put me down as the motion was a degree is worthless. So I was set up to support the motion, even though I had been to college, and I didn't believe that a degree was worthless. But I did believe that, you know, a degree relative to what you want to do, it's only the starting point, but I do think you need third level education of some sort to get onto the corporate treadmill. So I said, what am I going to do here to upset all these? There was all different colleges there. How am I going to upset all these people at this debate? I said, I know what I'll do. I'll tell a couple of light bulb jokes. So here goes. How many Trinity students does it take to change a light bulb? 1, but the bulb never really gets changed. The light bulb changer from Trinity holds up the bulb and waits for the world to revolve around it. Then we went to DCU. They were sitting over in the corner. How many DCU students does it take to change a light bulb? Ha, trick question. DCU isn't the real university. That went out great. Then the DIT place, the guys were over in the corner, my old alma mater. How many DIT students does it take to change a light bulb? 2, one to change the light bulb and the other to complain that if they had a better college, the light bulb wouldn't go out. And then we had all the art and design students from IADT. They were sitting over in another corner. How many IADT students does it take to change a light bulb? None. Lava lamps don't burn out. And then finally down to our country cousins down in Limerick. How many University of Limerick students does it take to change a light bulb? Hold on a second, there's a university in Limerick. So, anyway, that was me. Got off to a roaring start. Everybody hated me. Now, where's the button here?
Oh, sorry.
That's alright, okay. Yeah, I got it, have I? Sorry.
I promised to do something,
no.
But I didn't do it.
I have more jokes if we're stuck. We get on with the presentation. Now, just to tell you a little bit about myself, and again, Paul gave me a lovely introduction, but I'm a true blue Kilkenny man, born and bred. And I always say to people that whenever you're anywhere, always be proud of where you're from, and that's I always put up the Kilkenny emblem there on the first slide whenever I'm speaking. I grew up in a family business. My father actually was a hotelier, and he owned a hotel called the New Park Hotel in Kilkenny, which he had set up in 1966. He was the former managing director at Juries, and he went down and he bought an old house and 50 acres of land in 1966 for 17 grand, and that was the start of 50 wonderful years in that business. He was again, excuse me, a very old school hotelier, and I remember when I was just about finishing school, not knowing what I was going to do in college, and I said, I'm thinking of going to DIT to do catering and hotel management. And the first thing he said to me was, well, there's no job for you here. And I said, that's okay, because I don't want to work here. And he was of the view that you never ever came into a business until you learned something somewhere else. And I have to say, that stays true to me to this day, that if you're, and again, it's always a temptation as a parent who has a business to say to the young son or young daughter, come back here and work in the family business. But I really think that you do the individual a disservice, because really they should learn on someone else's watch. They should make their mistakes somewhere else, and they should come back to the family business where they can add some value. And I think even when you go into a family business, if you haven't done something somewhere else, it's difficult to gain the respect of the people who work there and who work there. So I'll be saying that none of my girls will be working in Insomnia, because I'm going to send them off working somewhere else first. And if they want to come back maybe in 20 years' time, if we're still there, please God, then that's all fine. So I went to DIT, really enjoyed it, and when I was there, I got a job. I got a job as a chef, part-time chef, never trained as a chef, but managed to get a job as a chef in a place called the Peppermint Gardens, which was in the old South County Hotel. All of you are too young to remember it, but it was a real cool and trendy place, and I worked there at night and I went to college by day. And they were the first people in Dublin to do really trendy things like tacos and guacamole. The chefs couldn't pronounce them, never mind make them. So that's what we did there. And then I went through college, enjoyed it, graduated, and decided then that I wanted to maybe stay closer to the culinary end of things, even though I had got my management qualification and all that. And I managed to bullshit my way onto a North Sea oil rig, where I told them I was the best chef that they'd ever had. And I worked up in the North Sea for about 2.5 years as a chef on a number of different oil rigs. And that was an amazing learning for me. It was 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, work really, really hard. The standard of food had to be second to none, because all these chaps on the rigs, they had no other vices except the food. And because the money was so good, most of the guys working on the rigs were all the Michelin star chefs from the UK. And the big joke was that we had 5-star chefs and 1-star customers. And that was true, because these guys used to come up to the counter and just growl at you. We used to call them bears. And it was amazing, because they were working out in some of the rigs that I worked on were up near the Arctic Circle, freezing conditions, and the guys would they eat your arm off if you left it there too long. And we used to have 14-inch plates. Now the standard dinner plate is about 10.5 inches. A 14-inch plate is huge. And a guy would come along and he'd say, yeah mate, I'll have give me 2 burgers, a piece of chicken, some lasagna, and a Scotch pie on top, and that might only be his starter. So anyway, the company that I was with there, they transferred me over to Canada to a sister operation, where I finally decided to get serious and I got into management. And I worked in many of the great stadiums in Canada, the CNE Stadium in Toronto, the Civic Centre in Ottawa, in stadium catering, where we used to do, by all accounts, places like Croke Park, where we used to look after all the catering. And it was really good experience. Crowds of 50, 60,000 people, feeding them quickly, we looked after all the bars, and it was the culture at those games and all that was completely different. It was a family occasion where people drank at their leisure, they had all sorts of food, and it wasn't like the kind of way that we approach stadium catering here in this country, where you try and get 5 or 6 pints into you as fast as possible and wash down with a hot dog or a burger. So I learned a lot there. Then I came back to Ireland, and I went to work in UCC, and it reminded me of it when I came in tonight, the beautiful campus, the beautiful buildings, and I was the catering manager there for 2 years, and I ran all the catering and the bars, which was a good experience. Tough place, highly unionised environment, and really turned the place around. It was my first ever commercial success. The place was losing 70 grand when I got there, and when I left 2 years later, they had a profit of 150 grand. And I really felt that I had turned things around on the basis of improving the standards, and that's all it took, was if you improve the standards, the money followed. And I learned that back in those early days. So I was 13 years with the Campbell Bewley Group. I was the managing director then for nearly 7 years of Bewley's, the old Bewley's as it was then. We had 50 shops, we had a bakery, a franchise company, turnover of about 40 million, 800 staff, and that was really where I cut my teeth. It was the cut and trust of retail. I learned about property, I learned about customer service, and it was an absolutely really full-on place to work, and we used to work day and night, and we're really buzzed by the whole thing around customers. And it's a shame to see Bewley's not there anymore. When I was there, it really was the premier place to work. With a cafe on every high street, a major high street in the country, and a couple of things went wrong in Bewley's. 2 really key things. The first one was that they had a brand that was established in 1840, and they really struggled to modernise that because their customers wanted them very much on a nostalgic basis and what they remembered as a kid, and that didn't always work commercially. The second thing that really put toll to them was property. And when Campbell Catering bought Bewley's in 1986, the first thing they did was sell the properties and release them. So all the properties were rented, and it got to a point that when, and by way of example, Bewley's in Grafton Street, when I worked there in the mid-90s, the rent there was just under 400,000 euros, 25,000 square feet. The rent there now is 1.5 million. So every 5 years the rent used to double. You're selling cups of coffee. In Bewley's in Grafton Street, we were actually in that shop. We were open 24 hours a day, trading 7 days a week, and we couldn't make enough money to pay the rent. And that's been the demise of many a good business. And it saddened me greatly. Most of it, the demise happened after I left, but I could kind of see it happening. So I decided then that in 1998 that I was going to finally go and do something for myself, and I left Bewley's. I had little or no money. I remortgaged my house, and I opened my first shop in Grafton Street, up the road from Bewley's, in the basement of Laura Ashley. That was called Perk, and it was a nightmare getting it up and going, working on a shoestring. But I remember back in those days that I was absolutely, a couple of things drove me on. The first one was that I had an inherent fear of failure. I'd never really failed at anything in my life. I was 38 years of age, and I thought maybe that I just was in over my head. I was undercapitalised, I was living, from hand to mouth, but I decided that if I was going to fail, that I wasn't going to go down without a fight. And I worked in that shop, that first shop, Perk in Laura Ashley, day and night, knew every customer by their first name, what they liked, what they didn't like, and gradually I saw the sales increasing every week. Every week it got slightly better. Then Christmas came about 3 months later, and I realised that I wasn't going to go bust. And that was the happiest day that I can remember in business. And you have to experience when you're in business for yourself, and hopefully some of you will go that path, but to be there in a shop, not being sure if you have enough money to cover the wages on a Friday, there's a guy at the back door looking for a check, it just brings out the best in you, because you really will do anything you can to keep that business going. And so then I got probably a false confidence. I opened one on Bagot Street, one on Dawson Street, and this is now in the subsequent years, didn't happen overnight. And then I won a contract in UCD for 2 new shops, one in the business school and one in the microbiology school. And then it took me till then to actually make it into a business. And then I sold the business, that was called Perk. I had 6 shops, and I sold the business to Insomnia, who were competitors of mine. They'd set up at the same time as me. And a week later, after I sold the business, the MD of Insomnia came in and said, I don't want to be the MD of this business. I can't do all that board bullshit and all this. Would you be the MD? And this is true as God. So I took the money that I got, and I put it all back in. I had it for a week in the bank, and I took it all, put it back in again, and I became the MD. And that sort of brings us, that's a long time ago now. That was in 2003. So that's where we are now. We've got, sell 5 million cups of coffee every year, 61 shops, 21 million turnover, 300 staff. And we were the first Irish company to go fair trade back in 2005. And when we changed to fair trade, we rose to, well, we'll sell nearly 100 tons of coffee this year, which is a lot of coffee. And when we changed to fair trade, I think we were doing about maybe 30 tons, 35 tons. The fair trade organisation in Ireland, their actual sales went up 25%. So it's something that I've been always very close to. It's something I've done work out with fair trade in Nicaragua, Ethiopia, Kenya. And it's not a charity as such, but if you saw the work that went into harvesting even one bean of coffee, and no machinery, back-breaking stuff, you'd actually never buy anything else. So it's firmly rooted in our ethics in the business, and it's a very important part of what we are. We also have a very important partnership with Spar and Mace. So as well as our own shops, in 30 Spars we have barista cafes, and in another 120 Spar and Maces we have bean to cup machines, which again they represent now almost half our business. So that partnership has been very successful. It's growing probably faster than the high street is growing. We opened 7 shops last year. We'll probably open about another 7 or 8 this year, which isn't bad. And we're right in the front end of retail. We've had all the problems with rents. We've had the economy turning on its head, and we had to react to that situation. And a couple of things that we did about almost 3 years ago, we decided that value was the only show in town. And those deals that you see around the place, lots of people do them now. We were the first to do them, and we had them for about a year to 18 months before anybody else copped on. And that was any sandwich, any coffee in the shop, €5. That would have cost you maybe $7.20 in 2006. Any coffee, any pastry, $3.75 now. It was $3.50. We had to put it up 25 cents there about 6 months ago. But those 2 promotions represent over 50% of our sales. So people come to us, and we've managed to keep our numbers of people coming over the door, even though there's less people working. People have left the country, and it's been a pivotal part of why we're still in business. Now, a couple of things I want to just tell you. Free marketing. A couple of examples here. On your left there you'll see Miley Cyrus. She was in town for a concert 18 months ago, walking down Grafton Street. Somebody took a photograph of her. Thankfully she had been to the camera centre and she had an Insomnia cup in her hand. That photograph was on the front page of every newspaper and on every internet site all over the world. On the right, we have a slightly different story. It was the dark, doomy day that we lost our sovereignty and the IMF came to town. In the bottom right, there's a poor beggar man who begs outside Elvery's at the top of Stephen's Green. He's sitting there with his insomnia cup, and the IMF guy, Mr. Shawbrand, his assistant, come to town. Somebody takes a photograph of him. It's in all the papers. And if that wasn't bad enough, then a tabloid newspaper, if you look at the top right, you'll see superimposed Brian Cowan's face onto the poor beggar man with the insomnia cup. You can't, it's marketing that you just can't buy. So that was that. I want to talk to you about goals, and if you just bear with me 2 seconds, about setting goals and how I do it. What I do is very simple. Every December, I sit down and I look at all the businesses that I have, and I'm not saying I have a lot of businesses, but I look at all the places that I work and so what I try and do is I come up with a 2-page document which effectively is a clear, concise summary of what I want to achieve during the year. So I have it on a PDF, it's on my iPhone, on my iPad, on my computer. I even have it laminated behind my desk. Well, I don't have it behind my desk because I don't want everybody to see it, but I have it near in my top drawer. So what I do then is I put dates on these points that take up 2 pages, and then I look at it every week, every month, and I just keep myself generally focused. So it's not reams of paper, it's not a big plan, but it's what I want to do in all the various, so in Insomnia, in Bang, in News Talk, in Dragon's Den, with all the Dragon's Den investments, there's just a few lines in each of them. And I find it really, really good if it's dated and you're targeted with it, and if you revisit it once a month, you'd be amazed. At the end of the year, I'll probably get 70%, and that's what I've got the last couple of years. 70% of what I've written down on those pages actually done, because I'm sort of focused on it. So that works. Time management, again, I believe that I'm a classic example of the new type of worker where you have about 6 jobs. And I think that's the way it's going to go. I think that there's no jobs for life anymore. And I think that, it's not going to be unusual for somebody in years to come to work 2 days in one place, a day at home for somebody else, a half day for somebody else, and that we are going to be working on demand. So we're going to be working as we're needed, as our skill sets can be applied to a particular situation. So I'm already doing that. I work 2 days a week in Insomnia, and one of the rules I have is that when I'm working in Insomnia, I don't do other work. So I don't get distracted by Bang or News Talk or Dragon. So I just do the 2 days. And when I'm in Bang, I don't worry about Insomnia. When I'm in News Talk, I don't worry about anything. So I try and work it that when you're in the place doing that job, that you actually apply yourself to that. And I find it actually, by and large, works for me. I only work with one thing at a time. So if I'm working on whatever it is, I just focus on that. I don't try and do 6 things together. I get up early every day. I'm up at 5:30 every morning. I have the papers read by 6:30, 6:45, to the independent cover to cover, the business section of the Times. And I always found that if I were to read the paper after 8 o'clock, I always felt guilty about reading it, that I was kind of doing it when I was at work. So it's just a habit I've got into over the years. I have 2 strong cups of coffee before 8 o'clock. I go to the gym 3 mornings a week for half an hour, again after I finish the papers. But I'm ready to go at 8 o'clock, having got my head deep, full of information from the papers, or having gone to the gym and worked out. So I try and stay organised. I do try and I'm not naturally organised. I have to kind of work at it reasonably hard. And I schedule time for different things. So the good thing about, there's a lot of work that goes into the 2 hours of live radio on Sunday morning, I try and schedule about 3-4 hours late Friday afternoon to do that, maybe between 2 and 6. And the good thing about that then is that it doesn't cross over my week. That I go in on Sunday morning at 7 o'clock, I go on air at 9, and I've had all the papers read, and if I don't do it that way, I just can't do it. So if I was to come in at 5 to 10, or quarter to 10 and go on air at 10 o'clock, I couldn't do that. So mentally I have to be organised, and I have to have properly prepared for things. So that's what I do. And I understand it may not work for everybody, but it works for me. I try and lead from the front, and I've always tried to work in the shops, work with the customers, have a very sort of hands-on approach. And the biggest difficulty I had was when I had maybe 6-7 shops, standing back and not being in every shop every day, not being at every dog fight, it took me a couple of years to actually work out how to do that and to trust other people, to pick, first of all, pick good people who had different skill sets to me, people who were better at stuff that I was maybe weak on, and then letting them do the job. But I always find, and I still find that if I go into a shop, and I spend a lot of my time in the shops, if you go in, and you don't go in and start organising things or telling people what to do, you go in and you speak to customers, you work with staff, and it's just, they find it very motivating, and customers love it, and you also know what's going on in your business. You'll know more, you'll find out more from going on. I do one shift a week in Bang in the restaurant, go in for 3 or 4 hours. Again, I don't manage the room, but I talk to customers, talk to staff, and I keep myself busy. And I get the figures every day, I get the accounts every week, and I visit it one day, and I know what's going on in the business, because I talk to staff, I talk to customers, and I look at the numbers. Very simple, but it works. And you have to know what's going on in your business, and you have to be in your business. And I do try and pick good people and delegate to them. I also get rid of people that underperform and consistently underperform. And you've got to be somewhat, I won't say ruthless is the wrong word, but you allow somebody to make a mistake, but if somebody doesn't fit in and they don't buy into the dream, you've got to move them on, and you've got to move them off the stage. And that's just the reality of business. And I try and work with people then to see where I can help them. The CEO in Insomnia, I try and work with him on specific things, maybe doing sales calls, maybe looking at a property, but again, not cutting across what he's trying to do, what I've delegated him to actually do, but to assist him in particular areas. Clarity. What I do there is I agree budgets and targets with people, review them regularly. So again, a bit of planning in November, December, what's the plan for the year, map out the budget, key things that we're going to do, again, not reams of paper, but what's the target, how are we going to get there, and again, agree it with the person that's doing it, and check in on it regularly, same as I do it myself, and I find that really, really works. I said to you earlier, get the leadership. Now, getting creative again, I thought this was a good one, I'll just show you. There's a guy now who, you'll notice him, a plumber with a good idea, somebody who wants to be noticed, and I like it the way he's called AIM when it's talking about fixing toilets and stuff like that. The other thing that's very important in business is luck. And I just want to tell you about this fella here. Last year, this guy won 186 million in the US lotto. And guess what? 2 days later, she became his girlfriend. How lucky can you get? There's also bad luck. That was me and Stephen's Green there about 2 weeks ago. Stuff happens and you just have to go on with it. But I do really believe in luck. And I think I do agree with the philosophy that, the harder I work, the luckier I get. And that is true. Now I want to just leave you with this. And I want to tell you one more thing after this. But I want to just go through these because I think these are very important because they're not business tips as such, but they're life tips. And number one is you forget the begrudgers. Stop listening to Joe Duffy. Listen to me on Sunday morning. It's much more upbeat and positive. But all that negative stuff, all those talking heads that are out there in the media, talking everything down, really, all they do is just suffocate us all. And negative energy like that is infectious. Also, so is positive energy. Number two, and I think this is particularly apt if you're at college or you're thinking of doing something. The most important thing that you can do is enjoy your work and enjoy what it is you do. And I don't say that lightly with 450,000 people out of work. But if you find yourself in something that isn't right for you, you really should get out of it, and you really should find something that you enjoy doing, regardless of, the monetary stuff or whatever it is. But I can tell you that if you enjoy what you do, you'll do a better job, and you really, really will feel fulfilled. Often it can be that, you work part-time in a different job, you go back to college and study something else, but it is possible to change course if you're unlucky enough to find yourself doing something that you don't like doing. Number three, it should be number one, it's all about health, it's all about family. And again, young people don't really get this, and I understand I didn't get it myself when I was young, but as you get on in years, as you have other responsibilities, you realise the importance of family, of health, and of friendship. It really is, because life is about those three things. Number four, there's massive value out there. You can get anything, everything is for negotiation these days. And there was never really a better time to set up a business than today, because you really, really can pay bottom dollar when it comes to negotiating things. Now, funny, I was in my dentist there in Dunleary last year. He says, "Oh, jeez, Bobby, you're going to need a crown." I said, "How much will that be?" He says, €900. I said, "I'll give you 500 cash." He says, "Fine, yeah, I'll take that. This is a dentist. People who did solicitors, dentists, accountants, architects, they'll all negotiate. So don't be afraid to ask, because if you don't ask, you won't get the discount. 5, positive people. I really try and seek them out. I really try and work with positive people. It isn't always possible, because often you find yourself in a situation where you don't create the team. But positivity is a huge thing in my book. 6, we talked about the goals and targets earlier. Go and do it, even if they're written on the back of a fag box. Write down 5 or 6 things that you want in your life or in your business, and check in with them every month, and I guarantee you'll achieve 6 or 7 out of the 10 by the end of the year. Integrity, massive, and never forget that integrity, Maynooth is a small village, town, Dublin's a smaller place. If you do something stupid, if you take a shortcut, if you're dishonest, it's just, I've seen so many people do things that they've lived to regret, and for small gain often. Just their whole reputation, and reputation to me is everything. Innovation. Innovation is really, it's not about always coming up with new things. It's often looking at what you're doing, seeing, can you do it better? Can I do it quicker? Can I do it faster? Can I do it cheaper? And we try and look at that all the time in our business, how we can improve things just to make it better for the customers and also for ourselves. Network. I believe in a business, everybody's responsible for sales. The guy in the warehouse, the girl in the office, whoever it is charged with bringing in sales. Also, you hear people say, no, I don't really do that networking stuff. You got to do it. You got to get out there, sell yourself, sell your business. It's the way things are done now. And finally, I'd say to you, please stay in the ring, because it will get better. Thank you very much. Absolutely, I will, yeah. I'd be delighted to answer any questions anybody has. This is where everybody goes quiet.
Yeah. Oh, not Maynooth students, no, that won't happen.
Okay, I have another joke, if you have no questions. Right? I was on the I was on the web there a couple of months back, and I deal with customers all the time. Customer complaints, right? This is Thomas Cook, the travel company. They published a list of the most 10 bizarre complaints they ever heard. Wait till you hear some of these. The brochure stated, no hairdressers at accommodation. We're trainee hairdressers, would be okay if we stayed there. The beach was too sandy. It's a tourist at a top African game reserve. This is a great one. He said that he was visibly upset on his honeymoon because at this game reserve he spotted a visibly aroused elephant and it made him feel totally inadequate for the rest of his holiday. This is true. This is what they had. My fiance and I booked a twin-bedded room, but we got a double bed instead. We now hold you responsible for the fact that I find myself pregnant. Poor old Thomas Cook, having to deal with that. No, I'd be delighted to take any questions you have, and so please ask. Yes?
Bob, you mentioned about managing out underperformers and people who don't buy into the dream. Is there anything that you regard as a non-negotiable for any of your businesses?
Well, any where integrity would come into question, it's just not. It's just there's no excuse, so it's gone. I would generally try. I would be very tolerant in terms of getting to know somebody and letting people, give them a chance. And like we started a new marketing girl there recently in Insomnia. She's with us a couple of months, and I was just curious to see how she's getting on. But if I would allow somebody, it's not like that you screw up and you're out the door. I'd be very tolerant of somebody making a mistake, but just if somebody doesn't want to be there, if they're not really driving on the same train as you just got to engineer them off the team. But integrity is the thing that I just would draw a line under. I'd have a tolerance for everything else. Yes?
You were saying part of the revenue, or I think it was 9 million euros, regarding is franchises. So it's along the same kind of lines. How do you ensure that your reputation isn't tarnished by something that the franchisee are going to do?
Well, we first of all, just on that model that we have, it's one agreement, one person. So we don't have individual franchise agreements with every Spar guy. Right. If he underperforms, if he takes a shortcut, he's gone. Yeah, and it's actually a very good model because in most of the cases, Spar are the landlord. So once the rent is paid, he then basically, the difference between what he's left after the rent and his costs are paid is his profits. And again, if he mucks about, does anything, puts somebody else's beans from our machine or like that, out the door. So and we also have the product list very tight. So there's only about 10 things that he has to buy. We can track them in head office. So we can check his purchases, his sales, and then we've employed 3 people around auditing. All the franchises get audited at least once a month, sometimes twice a month. And we have 3 people dedicated solely to coffee training. So it's a combination of a tight agreement, training, auditing, and just good policing. And it works. And we did franchising in Bewley's, disastrous. Just the worst thing they ever did. A big unwieldy menu. A fellow up in Donegal saying that he had to buy cream cakes from Dublin, sending them down in a truck every day. Once the only way franchising works is A, that the standard is kept. B, there has to be enough in it for the franchisor and franchisee. If the balance goes one way or the other, it'll fail. And I've seen it fail so many times. And that learning in Bewley's was a huge learning for me, that when I went into the franchising, it was very cautiously, absolutely controlled, and it's really worked for us. But it was only on the basis of a bad experience that I was paranoid. I didn't want to do it. I was almost paranoid about it, but we got it to work, and it works finely now. Yes?
Yeah, you've said that Bewley's met their demise because they or partly because they became irrelevant. And if you're constantly innovating, what's your process for innovation? Or how do you stay fresh, stay relevant?
Well, we travel a good bit. We try and look at what's happening in other jurisdictions. We attend trade shows in Ireland, in the UK, in America. We're in tune with things like the Specialty Coffee Association, those kind of things. Nothing massively complicated, but we're all the time looking at products and trying to say, you know, what can we bring in here without throwing out what we have, but just a rolling program, particularly on things like pastries and that, where you get a lot of menu fatigue. You just have to keep rolling it on, and I think we do a reasonable job on it.
Oh, so do I.
Thanks.
John Cullen. John?
Thank you, John, yeah.
You were one of the first Irish company to go 100% fair trade. Was that a conscious decision from the outset?
Yeah. Well, it was. We were. How long were we in business? So we were 98, 7 or 8 years. So we're probably longer fully fair trade than we were conventional. I was very bothered by what I saw around fair trade, and this is, I suppose, you'll get people, and I won't even mention them by name, but their companies sometimes begins with an S, but they will talk about fair trade in all their marketing brochures, but only about 4% of the coffee is actually fair trade. I wouldn't go in on that basis. I said we're either doing this or we're not doing it, and you know, you've got to be honest with your customers, in my view, because you'll always be found out. And we just thought that if we could make the connection between what's happening out in the hills in Africa and Ethiopia and that, and you know, not in a sort of a twee way or in a kind of a, you've got to be very careful with something like that you don't be seeing as sort of manipulating the situation for commercial gain. So we just tried to bring a real story. These are the people who grow our coffee. This is who they are. This is how it works, and just subtly bring it into the shops. And people like fair trade now is just, it's a benchmark. There's now